Welcome to BizTech's Ambassador Conversation Show. Kenya is often referred to as the gateway to East Africa. It's a nation with some 55 million people and with a GDP of approximately 120 billion US dollars. With rich diversity, stunning landscapes, and a vibrant culture, it is situated in the eastern part of Africa. Kenya has captivated the world's imagination with its breathtaking savannas, majestic wildlife, and world-class athletes. Now, it's one of the largest economies in the East African region, and it plays a pivotal role in trade, regional stability, and innovation. Now, on that note, to tell you more about Kenya, we have the Ambassador of Kenya to Malaysia, His Excellency Francis Ndegwa Muhoro. Now, Your Excellency, welcome to the show.
No, thank you so much, Brian. It's a pleasure to be on this platform. And I think it's a good initiative for us to, get to connect our regions with this other region in terms of doing business, in terms of trade, and in terms of people-to-people engagement.
Now,
thank you so much.
Thank you, Francis. Now, for a start, could you tell us a little bit of your presence in Asia, because you've been here for several years and you've looked after several countries.
Yes. Yes, I've been here for the last, I'm on my 5th year in Malaysia, covering previously we were covering Indonesia, we were covering Philippines, we were covering Brunei, Darussalam. And even before then, we also covering Thailand, Vietnam, and so on and so forth. But since last year, about 2021, precisely October 2021, we opened up another mission in Indonesia, which is covering the Philippines and also Singapore. Previously, Singapore was being covered from India. So it wasn't quite viable in terms of connecting the people and the business and, dealing with issues from Singapore, from India. Today, we are covering Brunei alone. So we are resident in Malaysia and covering Brunei Darussalam. And that is all. And it's all in the plan of the Kenyan government to expand its diplomatic footprints and focusing, number one, Africa, and then Asia region.
And so this is obviously a very clear step forward in terms of, as you said, expanding the footprint diplomatically. What are some of the key focus areas for the Kenyan government in this part of the world?
The key focus for the Kenyan government is number one is in expanding the doing. Number one, like I said, diplomatic footprints, expanding the opportunities for trade and investment between Kenya and this region, to expand also on the people-to-people engagement, and focusing on areas in terms of trade and investment. Our current administration is focusing on, they're working around what you're calling better, that is bottom-up approach, with few areas they're addressing. Number one is looking at agriculture, which is meant to speak to the whole idea of food and nutritional security. Manufacturing, in all its spectrum, of course, you're looking at expanding our export base. And you're looking also at the SME economy. So the government is really focusing on growing and supporting the SMEs. We are looking at the universal health coverage. And when you look at universal health coverage, you're looking at in terms of putting up infrastructure, medical infrastructure. You're looking at issues of medical equipment. You're looking at therapeutics, the pharmaceuticals. And you're looking at even the issues of investment insurance, medical insurances, and telemedicine. And then the last one is on housing, in trying to speak to the whole idea of, having housing to address the shortfall. So we are talking about affordable housing within Kenya, where the government is targeting to do about 250,000 housing units every year going forward.
Now, is this part of Kenya's overall Vision 2030 plan?
Yes, this is all driven by the Kenya Vision 2030 plan, which is which works around our 5-year plan, and then we have what we call the medium-term plan, and then which also it cascades to the annual work plans in terms of what we are doing. So at the top, the umbrella is Vision 2030.
Now, the African Development Bank Group forecast that Kenya GDP is forecast to grow 5.6% this year, 2023, and about
Yes.
6% in 2024. Now, who are
Yes.
your top trading partners and what are your key imports and exports?
Our top trading partner, very interesting. It's number one is Uganda.
Okay,
Our
is your
neighbor.
neighbor? Okay.
Then you have it's at Uganda at about 15.2% in terms of trading. Then you have Netherlands. We have US. You have Pakistan. You have UK, and so on and so forth. Those are really our top trading partner. And looking at our export, for example, from agricultural produces, we have coffee, we have tea, we have cut flowers, we have fruits. Number one is avocado, which has started also coming into Malaysia.
Mhm.
We have the livestock products, we have textiles, and of course we have things like the niobium. It's a rare earth, but you're also looking at how we add value to it instead of exporting it as raw. So those are some of the. Of course, you have also the pharmaceuticals, especially within the COMESA and East African Community region. Those are some of our key export products.
Now, I want to zoom in then on Malaysia Kenya relations. We've had diplomatic relations since 1965.
Yes,
What does our bilateral trade picture looks like between our two countries?
our relationship has been very cordial, very warm. You can trace it as far back as during the colonial time. I remember, if history serves me well, we had our security agencies come here to fight the communist insurgency.
That's an
So you
interesting
have
fact.
yes. So then that's how far back we go in terms of a relationship. Coming closer to matters of trade, bilateral trade, we are saying let me start by saying there's still a lot of room for improvement. There's still a lot of room for increasing the volumes. Because when you look at, for example, just pick last the 2021 figures, our exports to Malaysia stood at about 20 million US dollars. When you look at our imports from Malaysia stood up almost $90 million. You see, it's so skewed to Malaysia.
Malaysia.
But then I've always looked, I've always seen it as a losing argument if you're going to stand on the argument on the point that there's trade imbalance. When you look at the volumes, they are quite low. We have potential to do even more.
Where do you think the
So then,
opportunities are in terms of growth? Which are the sectors that perhaps Kenya could sell more to Malaysia and Malaysia could sell more to Kenya as well?
we can still look at the same areas, the areas of things like the apparels, the textile stuff. You're looking at our coffee, you're looking at our tea, our cut flowers, our fruits generally. Those are areas of possible engagements, and we can expand in those areas. For Malaysian side, still the same the things about the palm oil, electronics, and so on and so on and so forth. These are some of the areas that we can pharmaceuticals, medical equipment. So those are areas that we can really leverage on.
Now, moving ahead, now that you've identified that from a Malaysia, and you also identified that the Kenyan government is really looking at not only expanding its diplomatic footprint in ASEAN or in Asia, but also around the trade footprint, obviously.
Yes,
What
yes,
sort of
yes.
investment are you looking to attract from ASEAN to Kenya?
The investment, the investment that we are looking to attract from Malaysia, number one is in the area of agrochemicals and fertilizers. You're looking at energy and especially the renewable energy. Infrastructure. For example, you have China is very large in Kenya in terms, and generally in Africa and other parts of the world, doing roads, doing housings, doing railways, doing ports, and all this. These are areas that we really can that are open. I talked about the medical area in terms of medical equipment, pharmaceuticals, or what I call therapeutics, and so on and so forth. These are These are wide within the 4 areas that I just mentioned. Because when you look at, for example, when you look at agriculture, Malaysia can rely more on Kenya and generally Africa for its food and nutritional security.
And
That
that's a big issue because Malaysia is a net
it is
importer of food.
exactly, and the reality that has come with the COVID-19, the reality that has come with what is happening in Russia and Ukraine, is that you want to diversify your sources in terms of where you buy your stuff and in terms of even where you sell. So then you're saying in the area of agriculture, Malaysia can rely on Kenya and generally Africa. In the areas of manufacturing, it's a broad-based area. For example, when you're looking at the issue of housing, you may talk about construction of houses. You may also talk about manufacturing of building materials, affordable building materials. When you're talking about the universal health care, health coverage, you're looking at digging into the areas of medical equipment. You're looking to the areas of pharmaceuticals and medical items generally, and even the area of telemedicine. All those opportunities that are sitting out there.
And that's interesting. So, and telemedicine in particular, because it's not only a Kenyan problem, but in fact, it's a broad problem throughout many countries in Africa. There isn't enough doctors. So getting access to high quality specialists, maybe not at a
Yes.
GP level, is a big issue in many countries in Africa.
Yes. Very, very true. Very true. And that is why the whole idea of telemedicine really works. You don't need to be in Nairobi. You don't need to be in another part of Africa. But through telemedicine, you're able to still address the issues of, various health conditions that are challenged in Africa. So connection between our hospitals, our doctors, and the doctors in Malaysia through telemedicine, I think that would serve very well to address
And that
that.
sounds like a very interesting idea. But let me put on my lens now as an investor. You
Yes.
identify infrastructure and housing as big opportunities for businesses in ASEAN. Why hasn't
Yes.
investment happened so far beyond the Chinese? Why do you think it hasn't happened?
I think Chinese they've been they've been quite proactive, so to speak. And I think the investment they're putting in through the Exim banks and all those banks, it's huge, 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 huge. And it is not to say that that space is only left for the Chinese. It's for any investors. Because when you're looking at the issue of housing, you can approach it in few models. Number one is public-private partnerships,
Mhm.
or even private-private partnerships. Majorly, those are the two areas that any interested investors can come in. And the facilitation is there from government for any interested investors in that line. And we have a lot of incentives for any companies that want to invest in Kenya. There are quite a lot of incentives, and we're encouraging them. Number one is the ease of doing business. In terms of registration of companies, it's just an online thing. It's a 24-hour thing. You don't need to have 100% shareholding. You can have 100% shareholding. You don't need to have a local partner.
Wow. Okay, that's very good. That's a
You
very
are you are
big
not
advantage.
you are allowed to expatriate your profits, and you have tax rebates in certain bands. And of course, the other thing that we encouraging people to step into is the whole idea of the economic, special economic zones, which they're all over across the continent, the country. So any investor coming, for example, if you're coming in for housing to manufacture building materials, you have the SCZs where you can operate from, ready for you. You have good road networks. You have rail. You have from Mombasa to Nairobi and still expanding. We have the standard gauge rail, and we're still running our meter gauge rail. We are refurbishing it so that at least it's able to connect in terms of purpose of transport. We just we commissioned our Lamu port 2021 November. 3 berths are already complete and what we call the LAPSET. It's a LAPSET project. That is Lamu Port, Ethiopia, South Sudan, a transport corridor, which will take in, there's a road network. It will take in a railway network and petroleum pipeline, a pipeline for petrol or petroleum products. So all those opportunities that are out there.
Your Excellency, it's been a fascinating conversation. Actually, it's set my mind, if you could see from my face, thinking in
Yeah, I
terms of
can see.
all the investment opportunities that could be there. And
Mm.
and just to recap, really simple stuff to execute. For example, telemedicine and telehealth providers in Asia Pacific, and offering the services in Africa. Obviously, infrastructure and housing.
Yes.
Francis, before we leave, any final words you'd like to leave the audience with?
I think before I leave, I just want to say that Kenya, okay, let me put it this way. Africa is where to be. Africa is where to be. All right. Number one, Africa, you're looking at a population, a market of 1.4 billion. You need to give a thought about that.
Yes.
Number two, you're talking of a continent that has a third of the world minerals and natural resources, a landmass. You're talking about a continent that is starting to integrate at various levels. Number one, we have already operationalized the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So that if you're manufacturing, let's say from Kenya, you have 1.4 billion population to sell to. If you can't reach the 1.4 within the East African community, you're looking at 400 million population. If you expand it a little bit, you're looking at a Comesa region, that is the common market of East and Central Africa. You are looking at close to 700 million population. So that is there for every person to take. So, and the environment for doing business is improving. The connectivity is improving in terms of the road networks, which is driven or which is informed by the Africa Union Agenda 2063, which is looking to connect the continent, all the 54 member states. For example, when I talk about the LabSet project, the road connection will go all the way to, for example, to Moyale, our border with Ethiopia, and all the way to Addis Ababa. And from there, it can connect to even outside of Ethiopia. The other one will go through up to South Sudan, and it can connect even to Central African Republic. You look at our road from Nairobi, from Mombasa, comes all the way to Nairobi, goes to the western part of the country, into Uganda, and into the northern part of Tanzania. And this is how things are happening. And this is why I would say any investor really serious to wanting to invest, Africa is the next frontier. And Kenya is already positioned to play her role, to take her position, her position in tapping these investors. So let's not be covered by the negative media coverage that you're seeing. Our eyes are covered and you cannot engage. We are challenging the investors in this region to engage more with us in Kenya and Africa generally. The opportunities are just huge. You can't just miss it.
Francis, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
Yes. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, Brian. And I hope you do this more and more. And I appreciate. I've seen your structure on how you want to do this. We will be. I can assure you, we'll talk to the heads of the stock exchange in Nairobi when you let us know when you want us to do it, and we can identify even the three local companies in Kenya, and we can connect. We will not. We can. We will connect you to them, and we'll connect BizTech Asia, and with our local media houses.
Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Thank you so much. We've been speaking to the ambassador of Kenya to Malaysia, His Excellency Francis Ndegwa Muhoro. I'm Brian Fernandez, and you've been watching and listening to BizTech's Ambassador Conversation Show. This interview will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.
Thank you so much, Brian.